Hey, welcome to our podcast where we talk about movies and TV. My name's Tom.
And my name is Joel.
And this week we're talking about Skyfall.
Skyfall was released in October 2012 and was directed by Sam Mendes. The film had a budget of between 150 and 200 million and actually had a box office of 1.1 billion.
And Joel, what were your first thoughts on Skyfall?
I loved it. I mean, for me, this is peak James Bond. When you compare this to the earlier, prior 20 movies that we've had, and even including the first two Daniel Craig movies, this movie for me stands out, and it's kind of the most earned Bond movie we have. It works. It doesn't just work as a Bond movie, it works as a standalone movie. So you don't necessarily need to be a fan of the franchise to really enjoy this story in particular. You know, we get a lot more emotion in this movie, and it carries a lot more weight compared to the previous Bond movies. And I think Daniel Craig is fantastic in this one. This is, I feel like he gives his everything in this one, and yeah, it's a fantastic movie overall.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And the interesting thing about it as well that they nearly the film itself nearly didn't happen. In 2010, MGM had some real big financial trouble. They actually filed for bankruptcy. They eventually bailed out and then got the go-ahead to start filming again. And that's when they, advised that the film would be coming out in late 2012. And, I remember the first time I saw it, I was absolutely blown away, especially after seeing Casino Royale and, being surprised and blown away by that film and Daniel Craig's involvement as Bond. Then watching Quantum of Solace, which was just terrible. It's just bad, and I think everyone kind of agrees with that, really. And the name Quantum of Solace is just a terrible name as well. It's a
terrible name, and it's a terrible story. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, if we comparing this to like other Bond movies in the past, from when I was watching them when you're younger as well, like, you just watch them, you think generic bad guy wants to take over the world or something. It's Quantum of Solace is the worst, and he's just trying to keep water. That's what the treasure is. It's just water. That's the goal, is that they got the water supply, and it's a damn movie.
And it was backed by a very forgetful song as well. One of the worst Bond songs, I think, as well. It was Jack White and Alicia Keys.
Oh yeah.
It was.
It's so bad.
So yeah, and especially after Casino Royale, we're not going to go into too much more about those older Bond films, but it was a Chris Cornell theme for Casino Royale, which obviously blew a lot of people away as well. Yeah. Really good, yeah. So, but just going back to obviously Skyfall itself, do you remember when you first saw it? Did you see it in the cinema yourself?
I think I did. To be honest with you, I can't remember the first time I'd watched it. The first time I really watched, I must have been in a hostel, and I was just downloaded it off iTunes, and I was in a 6-room hostel, and I just stayed in on my own, just trying to watch it on the crappiest tiny little iPhone screen at the time as well. But I can remember at the time thinking, this is definitely something special. And I know we'll discuss, probably go into a little more detail with this later on, but you could see that the influence on these movies wasn't necessarily the Bond movies that came before it, but like Sam Mendes has even quoted, like Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight is the big influence for it as well. And you can see aspects of that when you watch the movie in terms of the story, and even, dare I say, like with Roger Deakins' cinematography as well. He plays a particularly special part in the movie, and you kind of see the influence on his point as well, when it comes to Nolan's movies. So yeah, I think the first time I watched it must have been in Cardiff Cinema, but it wasn't until I watched it on my crappy little phone that I really understood the movie and I really appreciated it. And yeah, what about yourself?
It's funny that, really, isn't it? Like, it's funny how the most poignant time of you watching it was not actually at the cinema, but
yeah, I know, which is rare because
in a hostel,
I tend to remember every movie that I watch in the cinemas, especially like the big ones. Like, I mean, like if you say Star Wars Episode 7, I thought, that was in Queenstown, funnily enough, and I know everywhere. But this one, I'm like, I can't remember it.
It's funny. It's about the experience as well. Like in the theme of Sam Mendes, actually, not that long ago last year, the last film I think I saw properly at the cinema was at the Cineworld in Leicester Square, and we went to see 1917 on the IMAX.
Oh, really?
Which was just an incredible experience.
I was going to say that must have been crazy.
Oh, incredible! And And with Skyfall itself, I remember at the time, the first time I saw it at the cinema, me and my team, previous job, we won some tickets for a dining cinema experience. And we actually saw it on the big screen, but we had these really comfy, like leather chairs and a 3-course meal. And so people were coming out, giving you food. And it, on paper, it sounds quite interesting, but it really was quite distracting, especially, in the quieter scenes, and you can hear cutlery and plates and stuff like that. And it was just really distracting. So a couple of days later, I made sure I went and watched it again.
I'm just picturing the scene. I'm just picturing the scene now where the really quiet scene where they got the silhouettes and they're in Shanghai and he's hiding in the assassination, and all you can hear is, "Jeeves, mint sauce, please."
Yeah, that was me. Jeeves, I said rare for my steak, not well done.
Yeah, that would have annoyed me as well, because I can't stand hearing popcorn in the cinema, so never mind someone
it's loud enough, yeah.
slurping down on some gravy.
Slurping down on some gravy.
I don't know what the 3-course meal was, but you're going to go fancy. You went to go all out.
I had a pint of gravy on the side. But yeah, enough about my dining experience, and maybe let's talk about the film itself, because obviously a very interesting start for a Bond film. One of if the only one that doesn't start with the gun barrel sequence, which is actually at the end of the film.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
Sam Mendes in an interview said the reason why, because of that, because a lot of people were questioning why he didn't use the opening gun barrel sequence. And he said that the actual start of a film, if you can remember, where it starts with a close-up of James Bond's face, and he said, and he had a gun in his hand, and I think he said it was too similar, and they didn't want to change the opening sequence because they thought it was perfect, and they said, let's just throw the gun barrel thing at the end. But from the start, really, with that, he's trying to save that other agent, Ronson, and he's dying, and he can hear M, and M says to him, "Leave him." And so you from the start, M can be very ruthless.
Yeah, and I think this for me was the big thing that makes this movie a little more grounded and human. It makes them question their morals and their decisions, and the weight of what they're doing is going to have impact on them. And like you said, like Ronson is sad, and when she says leave him, you can see he's not dead. He's alive, and he can hear this. Or if he can't hear it, he can see the action Bond is about to take it, just to literally leave him there. So you can see in Bond's face as well that he doesn't want to be leaving him there. He doesn't feel comfortable with this decision, even though deep down he does know it's the right one to continue the mission. But I thought that was a definite weight to the story that they added, which I think a lot of the time the Bond movies miss out on. So yeah, that was
and I think we'll go into this later on, but I think it's quite an important start, because you don't realize it until you've seen it a few times, but it kind of leads onto her character throughout the whole film, about why why there is the bad guy Silver, and his relationship with M and James Bond himself. So but we'll go into that in a bit. But I mean, that opening sequence in Istanbul, incredible.
Oh yeah, fantastic,
absolutely amazing. And that actually, I think, they planned that for, I think they planned it for like 3 months, and it took 2 months to shoot, and it was a 12-minute scene basically. And
that's crazy, isn't it?
It's quite amazing. And there's scenes of him on a motorcycle being chased on top of a bazaar in Istanbul, and the funny thing is that, like, a little fact really, that the suits that were tailored for Daniel Craig and his stunt double as well, and Daniel Craig did a lot of his stunts in this movie, but they actually made about 30 suits, which were all different in size. So for example, when he's on the motorcycle, the suit was tailored to have like longer arms, so it wouldn't like roll up whilst he's on the motorcycle. And little details like the tie itself is weighted down, so it wouldn't like flap around whilst he's on his motorcycle.
It's a really clever idea, really, when you think about it. And can you imagine just being in the fashion design department going, yeah, let's just put a weight in that suit. Dan Craig puts one, starts choking.
I would love to think that they did film it without a weighted tie, and he's just on a motorcycle. It's just like flapping around in his face.
And he's just like, Sam, we got to do something about this.
Sam. we got to get a weighted tie, or I'm walking. But
another interesting point, sorry, with that scene, you know, when you're saying they're on the motorbikes going around, so because they were skidding a lot, the bikes were, apparently they actually poured Coca-Cola all over the floor. So it would go, because the sugar, so the sugar would make it go sticky. They couldn't use Diet Coke because there's no sugar in there. So they actually had to put sugar, like that proper Coca-Cola on the floor to stop the bikes from skidding, so they had more grip on the ground.
That's amazing. And with the amount of product placement in that film,
we don't see one can of Coke.
No, missed opportunity there. Like,
I know.
That's fascinating. And you know, we get an introduction to Eve, obviously, and like how she's obviously a field agent as well. And that amazing scene, the sequence, which then leads to him being, you know, chased by that assassin who, to me, I don't know about you, but he looks like a French Colin Farrell. I mean,
he does actually.
He's quite a handsome assassin, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's quite a handsome assassin.
Very Colin Farrell-esque.
Very Colin Farrell-esque, yeah. And obviously you've got that train sequence, which is just incredible from the start to the end. And you know, being on top of a train, and the bit where he's in a digger as well.
Yeah, that I was going to touch on that scene as well, because again, what works really well for this as an opening Bond scene, you know, it's not just him on his own. He's working as really more of a part of a team, which in some instances he's not necessarily used to in some respects. You know, he's working with Eve Moneypenny, and we don't know that's Eve yet until obviously later down the line. Yeah. He's speaking with M as well. I think it's Tana who's also with M. Mm-hmm. But he's working a part of this team, and you know, he's a lot more grounded. He's got to play by what everyone else is doing, have trust in them. But then they still have that over-the-top, far-fetched scene of him driving a digger on the back of a train. And, you know, all right, it's not grounded. It's a little bit far-fetched, but that's what makes it Bond. And like we say, you know, he gets off the digger and what's he say to him? He goes, just changing carriages. It's just that classic. Carriages.
And then he does his cufflinks.
Yeah, exactly. It's that classic, suave, charming Bond character that we know that just chucks in a charming pun as well, and it just works really well. With Eve though as well, what I really liked with this character, it wasn't someone, you know, you've got someone who is as experienced as Bond, and you know, he knows that he just like, you know, he just makes up, he doesn't have a plan, he just jumps on whatever comes next, and he's just got to make it up as he goes along. Whereas she, you can see, is a little more of a rank amateur in some respects, you know. Yeah, exactly. And especially this scene where we're saying on the train and she's got the gun, you can actually see her hands shaking as well. So it just shows she is well out of her depth in this respect as well. And it kind of works really well for the scene that they're not all just, it shows flaws in some respect in MI6. So it's just a really good scene overall.
And you know, and we hear, and James Bond can actually hear, obviously, M in his ear again, and she's talking to Eve, and when she says, oh, I've got a shot, but it's not clean, and then M goes, take the bloody shot. I mean, that's my
really good impression.
That's my impression.
Take the bloody shot.
It sounds more like the Queen, a poor version of the Queen. But yeah, and then it was just, then you see Bond, and it's just, you know, it's such a surprising, I remember seeing that for the first time, seeing actually Bond getting shot, and it goes into that, you know, opening sequence, the music, and you're left with this, you know, obviously he's not dead, because if he died straight away.
They actually did lose, you know, it's not the heroic thing of Bond winning and then going, da-na-na-na-na-na-na. He actually just loses. And I just think that's a really good way to introduce it, because like what you're about to say with what we go into next with the opening credits is just...
Yeah. It's stunning. I mean, obviously, because the way it transitions into that, he comes off the train, he falls into the water, and he goes under, and that's when the song Skyfall starts.
Yeah.
With Adele. And this, I mean, this is another interesting point. This whole kind of like intro itself is again quite different to the other James Bond intros. For me, I think this song is a very special Bond song. It kind of,
Yes.
after the disappointment of Quantum of Solace, it brings it back to another classic Bond song.
Yeah, it's definitely for me my favorite Bond song, because even now you could have this on the playlist and it comes on, you just like, oh god, let's just have this on. Let's just think of Bond when we listen to this.
I think I've called you before and you said you're on a run just listening to Skyfall.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it makes you run faster. It just makes you feel like you're a part of the action.
I bet you thought you were James Bond.
Yeah.
Why are you running in a suit?
Can you imagine that? Just a Welsh James Bond. James
work.
Bond, I am. It just doesn't work.
I mean, that could be. I mean, Daniel Craig. We know that No Time to Die is going to be his last film, so you could be next. You could be next.
Me or Piers Morgan.
Yeah, about the Piers Morgan thing. Before this episode, we did a bit of a run through, and we're about to show you a little clip from where it kind of went wrong the other day. Also, a Bond we haven't seen before, like a scruffy Bond. He's got a little beard on the go, hasn't he?
Yeah, well, it's funny because you say that as well, like when we compared to like Piers Morgan, because like when I was a kid, I always thought
Piers Morgan.
Piers Morgan. Piers
Brosnan.
Oh, can you imagine Piers Morgan as Bond?
That'd be a terrible Bond, wouldn't it?
Oh, I'd be so argumentative. He wouldn't be fighting anyone.
Can you imagine if that was, the next Bond? Because Daniel Craig's only on. He's got his last Bond coming out, and then that's probably why Piers Morgan walked out of Good Morning Britain, so he could go and film for the future Bond.
Oh my god. But yeah, just going back with the song as well. I think the lyrics in this are a little more poignant to the story as well. Like, for example, I've got the lyrics here. It's where it says, "Let the sky fall, when it crumbles, we'll stand tall and face it all together." I feel, for me personally, that's a little more poignant to the ending of the movie. Because right now, we don't even know what Skyfall means. No. When we first hear about Skyfall, and I think, there's a scene coming up, which we know where they do word association, and you assume that Skyfall is this failed ops mission, or it's something to do with his past in like, a mission setting as such. So you don't really know what the story is, but you just, the lyrics just feel a little more important to the story than, like, again, what you get with some of the other movies like Quantum of Solace. Is just, it just makes it a little more.
It's an interesting point, actually, because actually on the kind of like animated scenes on that, there is the actual Skyfall Lodge is on that intro. You actually see it, and you don't see it and you don't notice it until you watch it a few times. And what I loved about it as well is the fact that you see on some of the shots where you see James Bond's whole body and he's still got the suit on, he actually has the gunshot wound on his upper chest. And I think that's just, it just straight away shows that, it's not going right. There's a lot of questions to be answered. And it's just, I think personally, it's a great introduction. And another thing about the song itself, because I think this song, it won an Oscar, didn't it? It did win an Oscar.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. I think what was this song? It was the first Billboard Top 10 to win an Oscar since Eminem for 8 Mile.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Again, amazing. And, the actual song itself, a little fact that Daniel Craig, the first time he actually heard that song, he actually cried. And
really?
So it just shows you, especially someone like Daniel Craig, who, he's Bond, you think he's like some macho man. And and so it's just a very moving song. And, moving on from that.
How funny would it be if they just put that into the opening credits where Skyfall's playing and it's just him crying in the opening title?
Yeah, they didn't tell him that they filmed him for that bit. Yeah. It's just a looped video of him crying, basically.
Sam Mendes, and it was his real reaction, so I put it in the movie.
Things aren't going well for Bond. But yeah, so what was he going to say? So after that, shortly afterwards, we go straight to M with the aftermath of us thinking Bond's still dead.
Yeah,
and we get an introduction to Ralph Fiennes' character Mallory. So M, I think, says that she feels like she's being summoned to the headmaster's study, and you straight away get this introduction that this guy Mallory kind of wants her and Bond out, talks about, that she needs to be retirement planning, so.
You straight off, you get a sense not to trust this guy as well. He doesn't give you a reason to trust him as well. And like, we know who M is, and we know that she, like you said, she feels like she's being summoned to the headmaster's office. She's in trouble, but this guy just doesn't, we don't get a clear vibe from him that he's got the right intentions either.
Is it because of the Voldemort thing, do you think?
It could be that as well. You're like, you've tricked us once before, mate, and how do you know we're not just trying to rip another part of your soul off, So, but yeah, I think it was an interesting. Again, I think it was great casting, because I think Ralph Fiennes is fantastic in the movie.
Brilliant, yeah.
It's but yeah, I'd be interested to see if because he is Inspector as well, isn't he? Is he Inspector?
Yes, yeah, he's Inspector.
Yes, God, I think I've only seen that one once. I can't remember him. All,
yeah, well, that's. I mean, we won't go into it too much, but Spectre, big disappointment after Skyfall. So,
really?
Which is, I think, which in a way, well, for me, but I think in a way that makes Skyfall so poignant and so, such a great movie, and and I think it adds another depth to kind of the struggles of MI6 at the time, and with M, obviously she's going through this kind of like guilt of Bond dying, her being responsible for it.
Oh yeah.
But then at the same time that Mallory is kind of involved now, and he kind of is talking about the new ways, and how M is part of the old kind of ways, and it needs to kind of end. And straight on the back of that, she's driving back, and there seems to be some kind of like encryption on her laptop, and then you see it's her face with a Union Jack, and there seems to be some kind of like Monty Python-esque kind of bit where her head moves, and then obviously we see MI6 exploding.
I think we touched on because I think for me this part was really poignant as well, where she pulls up in the car on the bridge, and the police are like holding everyone off. And for me, it just added a little more depth and lore to what MI6 is. MI6 is, because she says, "What does she say now to the police officer? Don't you recognize the bloody car?
You recognize the bloody car?"
Yeah, and it just adds a little more depth that they should recognize what this organization is. So yeah, it's a really cool sequence again.
Really cool. And it was, again, another kind of thing of it's all going wrong for them.
Yeah.
And it's just one thing after other. And it's just spiraling out. And shortly afterwards, we get that we see Bond. We see that he's on this island. He's drinking a well-placed Heineken in bed. One of many product placements in the film, as we talked about before. But, and then it goes to the bar scene, and he's doing that drinking game, and he's got a scorpion on his hand. Not the only, it was obviously CGI, but not the only kind of scene with Daniel Craig's hands which had been CGI'd. I'll talk about that in a little bit later. But yeah, so we can see he's kind of like, he's unshaven, he's rough around the edges, he's drinking loads.
He's given up, basically, isn't he?
He's given up, yeah. And it's quite a poignant scene where he's at the bar after clearly doing an all-nighter.
So hungover.
So he looks absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
And it's not a kind of Bond. You're not used to seeing Bond like this.
No.
You're not used to seeing Bond. And so, like, what was interesting as well is like how he suddenly reacts to, you look at him, you think this guy doesn't care anymore, he's given up. But as soon as he hears there's a terrorist attack in London and the MI6 building has been blown up, it suddenly changes. You can see it in his eyes, basically.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you do get a sense that he is bitter, maybe a little bit towards what happened, which is understandable as well. He's done with MI6, he's done with our life. He's just, in some ways, he's playing out the fantasy that I think a lot of people have, where they just get to sit on the beach all day and just drink and play with scorpions, But
as you do.
Yeah.
It's part of every package holiday.
The scorpion drinking game. But yeah, it is. It's, as soon as he sees that the news bulletin, which I don't know, do you always find it a bit cheesy that people find out the news from watching the news? Like, they always find out these informations that they got to be watching the news to progress the story for him. Yeah. Like, I'd rather
see on his phone or the paper or something.
Yeah, or I'd rather just see him he's just reading a tweet, just saying thoughts and prayers with MI6. And he's like, fuck's happened with MI6? And then that's how we find out the story, just make it a little more interesting.
Be a bit more interesting. And then that'd be another way to product place the Sony Ericsson phone as well.
But yeah, I think the thing with this is, you know, he needs this to get back out there, because he's not really done with them. He is very bitter towards how things were, but this is a thing that he needs to get him back out there. It's kind of like, slight tangent, but like, you know, where you see Bruce Wayne in The Dark Knight Rises, he needs Bane to get back out as Batman, because he's just living a recluse lifestyle. And similar to that, this is his thing, right? I need to get back out there now, and it's just the kick that he needs to do it, you know?
Oh, definitely. And it leads to, you know, that scene where we're suddenly back in London and Bond is in M's house. And
I love this scene.
It's a great scene. It's a really great scene. And, you know, interesting enough, that house was owned by John Barry, the original composer to the James Bond theme.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So there's just a little, I've discovered that not long after watching the film. So, but it's a really cool house as well. And it's a great scene. It's a great scene.
Yeah. You can really see the relationship that they've got here as well. When M goes into the house and you just see this silhouette behind of someone sat there, what did she say? Where the hell have you been? She knows straight away who it is. There's none of this, oh, thank God you're alive. There's just, she feels
isn't it, what bloody took you so long?
Something like that, yeah. But it is the fact that she does feel like, you know, she admires this person. She really is grateful to see him, but she can't play it. That's not in her emotions. And at the end of the day, it's a job. So she can't have that emotional connection with her subordinates, basically. But I really love that scene. Yeah. What did she say? It's
a nice, well, yeah, it's. I think, Lynn, what you're about to say, it's a nice kind of like relationship with them, because it's kind of funny. I was smiling when I first saw it, because I was like, okay, it's like that kind of like mother-son kind of tough love kind of relationship they have. And, you know, and she's like, she just like, you know, so like off the cuff says, oh, you don't own anything, we've sold everything, you were dead. And then he's like, I'll get a hotel, and she's like, well, you're not sleeping here.
I love that impression.
It's still terrible. I need to work on it still.
No, but it is, and it's again, just as we said at the beginning of the movie with Bronson, where she says, leave him.
Bronson. Bronson.
What did I say? Bronson. Charles Bronson. Imagine if Charles Bronson and Piers Morgan were in this.
I'd pay to see that. I'd pay to see that.
So Ronson, when she says leave him, and you get a little more backstory now about like the decisions she's got to make in her role, because what does she say to him? She said, what you expect, a bloody apology? You know the rules of the game. We both do. So it's kind of just adding that layer of like, she's got a lot of weight in her shoulders, and she can't let any of it get to her, except the one person who has, which is Bond. I love this, and I think it's one of my favorite in the movie, because you don't often get to see this growth in a relationship or build of two characters in a Bond movie.
Yeah, and it's certainly interesting, and it's kind of like you have that kind of like hint of relationship, but then it goes straight to business as usual, which then leads to the MI6 bunker. Obviously, since the explosion, they've gone underground, and it's an occurring theme with, you know, London and the underground in this whole film, really, and some great scenes. But the actual bunker itself, I mean, the actual Churchill War Room, they opened in 2016, I think, like as a museum, so you can actually go there for a visit. So it's quite interesting. So it's an actual place, and again, this whole sequence is incredible, because we see Bond and he's on the treadmill, he's doing pull-ups, he's clearly in great shape, but he's clearly not the same Bond as he used to be. You know, he's struggling.
Yeah, he's half the man he used to be in basic terms. And, you know, when he tries to take the shots as well, his hand is shaking, he's all over the place. And it is reflecting on the fact that it's time for them to move on now. They're not the people that can't do this job anymore, and they're still holding on to, you know, and he is stubborn, and he wants to be in the fight. He has that
aggression, doesn't he? Like he goes close and close to the target, and he knows that he's not the same agent as he once was. And and then obviously there's you talked about it before, the kind of word association scene, which is really interesting. The psychiatrist says like something like heart, and Bond goes to straight away to target. M, he says bitch, murder, employment, and then he says, and then we're all stumped a little bit when he finally says Skyfall.
Yeah.
And again, it's something we don't know what it is, do we? And he says
done. Yeah.
Done. Which, that would have been a perfect time for him to say, if he said, the psychiatrist said Skyfall, and he said Adele. And then he just held up, he could just hold up the CD.
With a tear in his eye because he knows how good it is.
and then Sam Mendes plays the clip of him crying again in the corner. So good, it made me cry.
I know. The thing with that scene as well, where we seen about word association, and I know this is me kind of just really pushing my ideas onto this, but it's kind of like if you've ever played word association yourself, and like you kind of panic in the motion because someone will say anything, you're like rushing to get an answer out, where Bond does this so calmly, like he knows so exactly what he's going to say. And it is interesting because Skyfall hits him and he goes, done. And I think it's just such a, again, it just really brings in that question, what is Skyfall? Well, we don't know anything about it. And it's really good.
We still don't know. And and then obviously we go into the scenes of him getting his test results back. We know that he's failed them all, that M passes him. And it also links to like the pride of Britain in a way, because if you see on M's desk, which she has that like bulldog, which has got a Union Jack on, which we see later on in a more poignant moment. But kind of like at the time, that was quite, everyone was quite proud because we just had the Olympics, which actually links to this film because obviously Danny Boyle directed that 5-minute scene for the start of the Olympics where Daniel Craig is filming with the Queen.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And he parachutes in, and I think at that time the nation was so proud, and there's Union Jacks everywhere. And now it's been tainted with Brexit. It's like shameful.
I know.
In a way.
I know.
You just see Brexit.
I know it does. Now we want our country back. That's all it is, isn't it? This is the thing with because what does he say to her as well about the dog, about the little bulldog? Oh, the building blew up and that bloody thing survived or something.
That survived, yeah.
It's just that little banter back and forth, which works really
well. I would love it if she looked up and went, Brexit means Brexit. That is a perfect moment. But so it just...
This is when he meets Mallory as well, isn't it?
Yes, and he clearly does not like Mallory. He clearly does not like Mallory.
I think when we talked about it before, he does actually shake his hand, but you can tell that he just does not. He's kind of on the same side of M. Like the way M feels is the way Bond feels. And it's just this element that they don't trust him at all. But again, like just same with M, like she passes him when she shouldn't have, and is once again, her actions are going to have drastic consequences, which again, when we meet the actual villain, then we see that again,
Yeah, I think it's just it's like you said, it's a poignant moment because you can see that there's respect, but there's hatred and untrust. And I think what would be quite funny is actually, again, like if Craig went to shake his hand, and then you won't be able to actually see this on audio, but or he swipes there, or he goes like that. He puts the hand to the nose.
Psych.
Take that, Tom Riddle. But yeah, so but I think it's...
fuck off.
We lasted so long without swearing.
I know.
Failed miserably. But
my bad.
What was I going to say? So I mean, shortly after that, we get the introduction to Q. Ben Whishaw at the National Gallery in London. Really interesting scene.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, like, really interesting scene. I mean, like, and how, like, on the other Daniel Craig films, there is no Q, and finally gets his introduction to this world again.
But is the statement of, look how young Q is compared to how old Bond is. I can't remember who's the bloke that played Q in the old Bond movies. And I think he was all the way up until Pierce Brosnan's films as well.
Yeah, I can't remember the actor's name.
I was going to say John Cleese then. It's definitely not John Cleese.
Definitely not John Cleese.
No, is it John Cleese?
No, it's not John Cleese.
No, it's not John.
No, actually, no. John Cleese took over the role in Tomorrow Never Dies. It was on the later films, or actually, you're not wrong. I'm thinking about the original Q.
I can't. I think his name was John something as well. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But no, it was just, again, where we saying that it's one of the themes is that it's time for the old people to move on a bit as well between M and Bond. So you've got this young, exactly, and you've got this young bucking who, to be fair, just every bit of banter that Bond throws at him, he can answer as well, and he knows what he's doing. But it's just this straight off the bat, you've got the relationship is built straight away, and they've got mutual respect for each other. It is one of the things. I just wish we had more of this in the movie. I would love to see I'd love to see like a buddy cop film with just Q and Bond doing, just wandering the streets and things. I think this was a very well executed scene.
Or even better, we do a movie merge where it's Paddington and Bond.
Paddington Bond. The crossover. The multiverse.
The crossover everybody wanted.
Just Bond wearing Paddington's clothing as well. But
Bond having a marmalade sandwich. I'd pay for that. Again, I'd pay for that.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good one.
But I think, and the kind of New Ways, he's talking about how he can do more in his pajamas before he's had his first cup of Earl Grey than what he can do in the field. And he also says, he was like, what were you expecting? An exploding pen?
Yeah.
And it shows you, it's like a little quip on like the old Bond films. And I think it was brilliant. And it's a great introduction to the character. And you can see that there's a little bit of banter between them. And straight away, he's very likable. And I think Ben Whishaw is a great choice for
I think he's fantastic.
As well.
Yeah, and again, just touching on, because when he does introduce himself, Bond says Q, and he's just got a smile on his face. Juxtaposed to what he was like with Mallory, where he shakes Mallory's hand, he's just straight face, just doesn't trust this bloke. Where straight away, it was like, I've got you. You can see that team building straight away, and they do work together. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it moves on pretty smoothly on to the next bit when it suddenly goes. It's in Shanghai.
Yeah.
And actually that swimming pool scene was filmed in the UK. That wasn't filmed in Shanghai. It looks amazing how they did it. But I think because of their budget restraints, because obviously they had recently filed for bankruptcy and recently been bailed out, I think, the budgets were a bit tight. It was still obviously a very expensive movie with an all-star cast, but because of that, they filmed quite a lot in London. And
he's just literally Bond in the Thames. And they've CGI'd him around the Thames.
But what was I going to say? But the Shanghai bit is great, though, because obviously we get the reintroduction to Patrice. I think it's Patrice, the French assassin who was at the start of the train sequence. And
Colin Farrell.
Colin Farrell, sorry.
The French Colin Farrell.
The French Colin Farrell. And the bit where he's in a chauffeur outfit, which Daniel Craig somehow pulls off still. He looks great. He looks great. But he's there and he follows him. And, we've got this amazing scene, and it goes into like this assassination scene. But what I was thinking is that I'm guessing here that he's flown from either Turkey or France or somewhere all the way to Shanghai. And, you'd think that he'd be jet lagged, or he'd need a snooze or a shower, but he's gone straight into it, hasn't he?
He should have looked a little bit more tired. Neck should have been a little bit stiffer. You don't just get off a plane and assassinate someone. You need to, at least stop for a Costa. At least scare yourself a coffee or something first and go, or Red Bull. Just say, right, I'm going to have 5 to myself now before I go and kill this person.
He probably flew first class, though. Those bad guys have got the budget for first class, or you'd hope so anyway.
But he just goes to his employer, this is my expenses. That is first class. Did you upgrade from economy?
Imagine if he flew economy. Imagine if you were an assassin and they put you in economy.
in cattle class, you'd be livid, wouldn't you? Do you know what? I'm going to do a really shitty job on this assassination.
Just to prove a point.
Yeah, I'm going to leave a trail everywhere.
I've got this screaming child next to me, and I'm going to tell the child my full real name.
My
it might be their
employer
first
is-
world.
I work for the Quantum of Solace.
Oh god, but
Where were we?
but anyway, but we well, we can talk about that scene because he follows him, and there's some great music by Thomas Newman there. There's like the music suddenly gets a bit more intense, there's pan drums going, and Bond follows him, and he jumps and grabs hold of the elevator.
The elevator, yeah.
And this is another part that you know that Bond's not fit for duty because he's slipping. He's not as strong as he was, but he still somehow manages to follow him up. And I mean, this leads to a great scene, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think the way they use the lighting here, because again, is Roger Deakins, who was the cinematographer for this, wasn't it? Yeah. So the way they use the lighting in this scene for me is fantastic, because the choreographed fight as well, there's certain aspects of it, and I think I've watched this film a few times now to see I still can't figure out who is who when the fight is happening, and I think it's trying to gauge that you're not supposed to know either, so it could go wrong for Bond. You know, we've just watched the scene where he is hanging on by a thread on the elevator, and you think, we've watched him die once already, you know, at the beginning of the movie, so you think we can't figure out in the silhouettes who this is. This could go really wrong at any moment. So it just builds on that intensity. But again, it's the use of the pink and purple lighting in the background.
Yeah, and there's like jellyfish silhouettes.
Yeah,
it's really cool. And actually, a few facts about that scene. The first of all, what's really interesting is the Patrice, or aka Colin Farrell, the person he's about to assassinate, you can see opposite on the building that there's this painting. And that painting is actually a copy of a stolen painting in real life from 2010 called Woman with a Fan. And so basically, it's those little details. So we know, obviously, this is like a black market arts dealer or something like that. And it's just really, really interesting, the attention to detail. What another thing about that scene, which you may know of already, but there was a lot of controversy at the time that Daniel Craig nearly bankrupted the movie because he was known to, when he arrived that day for shooting, he said to Sam Mendes, I bought these leather gloves. Can I wear them for this scene? Because I think it'll look quite cool. And so the direction team just thought nothing of it, said, yeah, sure thing, go for it. And so they had that big fight. And it wasn't until like the editing down the line, I think 3 months later, that they realized that James Bond couldn't be wearing gloves because he has Q gave him that Wolf of PBK, which was palm red.
Oh,
and so he's not supposed to be having gloves on. And they thought, you know, if we don't change this, it's, you know, people are going to come to town with us. And
they'd be looking for any plot hole as well. And that'd be the first one they would narrow in
exactly, on as well, And so they were thinking about reshooting it all. It would have cost them millions. And but you know, they did a bit of CGI, and the hands in that scene, Daniel Craig's hands in that scene, are all CGI. And it's not until you get the close-up where Patrice is holding him from the building, where Patrice like then dies, or Colin Farrell dies, and you get actually close-up of his hand, and he's wearing the gloves then. Because I don't think they could recreate that bit because the glove slips off a little bit and his hand slips. So, but yeah, just an interesting fact there, basically. That and it looks, now that you watch, you can see it's CGI, but it's super interesting. But that scene itself, and we get the introduction to Severin, the Bond girl, and it leads quite well.
She looks so cold in that scene as well, doesn't she?
So cold and icy.
She's not phased by anything that's going on.
Yeah. And also going back to The Dark Knight, you see that Bond does a bit of a Batman there, where he's there and he's kind of looking at her in quite a cool calendar shot kind of way, and then the kind of like light fades a little bit, and then she looks again, and he's disappeared, just like just in
away in the background.
The light just comes on like,
oh great, you can't see
he's
me
crawling on the
he's
floor.
out of breath.
CGI'd hands. But then we go into the next bit, which was in Macau in the casino,
Just
But
quickly before we go on to that part, this is another thing for me which is all Bond movies do it, but this movie in particular does it really well. Is it shoots different locations around the world, and
yeah.
they don't miss a step with that. Where do we start off? I think it was Turkey. The movie began, and Bond ends up on some, I don't know where he is, Tahiti or Thailand or wherever he's on
On the
gorgeous
islands.
beaches.
Yeah.
Then we go to London, and then we end up in Shanghai and now Macau. It's sometimes when movies try to do the jump around the world locations, it can feel a little bit rushed and all over the place, where this just flows really well and it makes sense why he goes to all these different places as well. I just think it's a really good point of the movie.
And just leading on from that, like into the next scene in Macau, like I think it starts with Bond, he's shaving, and Eve visits his hotel room, and we get that quite cool racy kind of like shaving scene with them.
There's a lot of chemistry here between them, and I was really impressed with this because again they imply that, because a classic Bond, like Bond gets the girl and things, so they always imply there's sexual chemistry between them, but they never allude to anything actually happening. Fun fact as well is it Naomi Harris who plays Eve?
Naomi Harris,
yeah. So for this scene, she actually practiced with a straight razor, and she was practicing on the crew members for 6 weeks prior. Can you imagine being one of those?
You want to be a guinea pig?
Yeah. Can I just try this on you? And you're like, oh, God, I don't want to say no to Naomi Harris.
Go on then, Moneypenny. Go on, Moneypenny. She what's interesting as well, I think, what was it? Like the cutthroat razors after Skyfall, sales went up 400% because
I'm not surprised.
Obviously it's any kind of Bond product placement and men, out there wanting to be and thinking they are James Bond.
Yeah, I know. I'm surprised we didn't see an uplift in sales on weighted ties as well. Bond's got a weighted tie. I think I'll do that as well.
I mean, I only got mine for £300, so. But yeah, and then after that, like, we start. I think that we get a little bit of an orchestral version of the Bond theme playing in the background, and it's the first time in the film he says Bond, James Bond.
Oh, that's right.
Iconic thing. He says it.
Yeah.
And obviously he's talking to Eve in the earpiece. And I don't know if you picked up on this, but he cashes in his chip, which he obviously got from Colin Firth. Not Colin Firth, Colin Farrell. Oh, the dimensions of this movie. How many extra people now?
I'd love to see Colin Firth in this. Bloody hell.
I was thinking the Kingsman, wasn't I, obviously? But there's that bit where he obviously cashed in the chip and it's, loads of money. And it always reminds me because he opens a briefcase. And what is it? Is it like 4 million euros or something like that?
Something
but
ridiculous.
It always reminds me of that scene in Zoolander. Do you know the briefcase scene in Zoolander? Do you remember what it's like? I don't know if you remember what like 500,000 or like $1 million looks like in real time and not the movie. And he opens a briefcase and it's like one wad of notes.
I know the one, yeah.
I think it was Zoolander. I'm so sorry if it wasn't, but
it might be Zoolander 2. I can't remember now.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, but it's quite funny when you see that. I always think that. And there's a bit where he is going off because to speak with Severin at the bar, and he walks past Eve, and Eve says, I can't remember what she says to him, but he takes his earpiece out and throws it in a champagne flute.
That's so disgusting.
It's horrible, and it's a full glass of champagne, which I'm guessing costs a lot of. I mean, I know these agents get paid a lot of money, but I mean,
but not to justify him. Yeah, not to justify him putting his dirty, waxy earpiece into your champagne. But saying that, mind, would you, if Daniel Craig done that to you, would you not drink that champagne? Seriously,
I'd sell it on eBay.
Yeah, exactly.
The champagne included.
I don't know what made me think of this when I was watching this scene as well, but like that room that they're in, it is like a casino, isn't it? Basically,
it's a casino. Yeah.
I don't know if you can remember the scene in Black Panther where I think they're in Seoul or somewhere, and they're in Black Panther, and we had introduced Martin Freeman in Black Panther as well.
Yeah.
and it looks, for some reason, it all reminds me, they look very similar, the way the room is made and the lighting in the room, does look very similar in that way. Yeah.
That'd be an interesting kind of thing to bring up together. I might do that after this chat. Like,
I could be completely wrong, but like we watched Black Panther the other week, and I'm sure they look very similar. There was another piece as well, which trivia I read the other day, and it was, now I can't remember Casino Royale, but where he says to Moneypenny, "Don't touch your ear," because she's got the earpiece in, and it's a throwback to a scenario that happened in Casino Royale, where someone is working with him, touches the ear, and they get found out. Yeah.
I so remember that's a casino scene as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
Mind blown.
Super interesting. Mind blown. But he has obviously that meeting with Severin, and kind of like talks about, you know, she says, like, you know, she tells him when the boat's leaving and what room she's in. And then, like, she says, like, Bond knows that her henchmen, these henchmen, are gonna kill him, and it leads to that you know, that quite cool fight scene with the Komodo dragons in.
Just quickly as well, it's this just goes back to classic Bond as well, because when she's talking to him at the bar and he has his drink and you can see the henchmen above him, and you just got that shot behind him, you don't see his face, but he's holding the drink and he cheers them, and then he drinks it because he knows what's going to go down, and
so
he's just
cocky.
And it's just, once again, that really suave Bond moment, and you're like, oh, you're such a badass.
So imagine if you got told that there's 4 blokes who want to kill you. I'd cry.
Yeah, I'd be looking for the bouncers straight away. I'd be like,
"Excuse me, could you don't trust these guys."
I'd fake a heart attack or something.
Faint or something with your doily. Oh my. But I think what's interesting is, like, you've got the Komodo dragon scene, which links back to the Wolf of PBK, which the one of the henchmen intercepts, and he goes to shoot him, and he's like, "Try it." Or so, I can't remember what he says. Doesn't work, obviously, because it's receptive to Bond's palm. Sorry, and then he just dies a horrible way. Like, a Komodo dragon pulls him in, and you see another Komodo dragon running across to the corner. So he's getting eaten alive by Komodo dragons, and Bond gets back to the top on the bridge, and he kind of like tilts it and goes, "It's a circle of life."
Such a bad pun. Like.
It's in a pun, and I just love it because, you know, obviously this Bond is very different to the other Bonds. He's taken more seriously, he's a bit rough around the edges, but he still throws a few puns in.
Yeah,
and it's just great.
I think 90% of the puns work, but this is one of the ones that doesn't for me. I'm thinking, what circle of life? What? You're born, you get in a fight, and then you get killed by Komodo dragons. I'm not seeing what the circle of life is for you.
He's just a huge Lion King fan, obviously.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Loves Lion King.
Quickly as well, I will say that for me, this scene and onwards, again, it's an amazing movie, but this is one of the scenes for me that personally takes me out of the movie. I think the CGI on the Komodo dragons is awful, and that's just me. I think it's just dog shit, and I just feel so. It just took me a little bit out of it, and especially when he jumps. Doesn't he just jump off the back of the Komodo dragon to jump up and grab? And for me, that was the only part I was like, oh, that was a bit cheesy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but then it goes in
as well.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, what were you going to say?
No, you go ahead. I was just going to go on to the next scene then. But...
Yeah, well, I think you'd probably say the same as me. Like, he goes into the boat, and Severin is having a shower, and he walks in naked and just walks into the shower with her.
The thing is,
it's a bit creepy.
This is the thing, because again, you look at the classic Bond movies where he is, you know, Mr. Charming, and like, all right. This is only 2012, so, you know, trying to be a little bit more it's trying to be more progressive. I don't know what Sam Mendes was trying to do with this scene. I know he was trying to make out, oh, this is classic Bond, you can get any girl he wants. It's just weird. I do not like this scene. It's just creepy, and it's like, because, you know, you just don't get into a shower with someone like that. Can you imagine she turned around and went, "What the hell are you doing?" She's also Welsh, by the way.
Yeah.
What the hell are you
doing? What the hell are you doing?
But it's just like, I don't know. Yeah, again, this is one of the only scenes for me which I'm like, it's too creepy. It doesn't feel like Daniel Craig's Bond in some ways as well.
It goes away from the whole consistency of the whole film, if you see what I mean. Like everything else.
I know.
Yeah, and after that, we finally are leading to the part where we finally meet the main villain, and we're on the way to.
How many minutes into
island.
the movie is this as well?
I think it's I've no idea, top of my head, but it's a long. I think it's over an hour. Surely we're in
easy. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a long way in, and which I love about this film.
Yeah,
it's just like a slow build up, and that island which they're on, it was filmed. It's an island just off Nagasaki in Japan.
Oh, really?
It was actually, that island is owned by Mitsubishi, and it's above like it's an underwater like coal mine or something like that. And Mitsubishi basically built loads of apartments and flats and shopping centers on that island. But I think in the mid 70s, they closed down production there and they moved everyone off. And since then, it's been abandoned. It's been completely abandoned. So it made it a little bit more, creepy, and you can actually visit that place. So, but yeah, let's talk about, Silver himself as a Bond villain.
I think this scene is again, I feel like I say this for a lot of the scenes in this movie, but this stands out for me, not just in this movie, but as an introduction to a villain in any movie as well. He comes down the elevator and you just have that one shot of him walking slowly, and he's really calm. He talks slowly and he's almost very polite as well. He's telling the most intimidating story. And I think what works well.
Two rats.
Yeah, he's talking about the two rats. Yeah, and he's just very calm, collect, and I think it's that slow pace of walking. The camera stays on him the entire time. He's just coming into the frame closer and closer, and it just makes him a very intimidating character. Now, when you hear him, he's not like the classic Bond villains of like Jaws or Scaramanga, where they are just trying to be as menacing as possible. He's just a very calm and collect bloke, and I just find his actions very, it kind of grosses you out a little bit. He's very he's like a menacing presence on the screen without trying to be as well. Yeah,
creepy
he's
in
just
a way.
Creepy. Yeah, very creepy.
And the way he uses words, and straight away we kind of like, he explains in a way that that there's a link and he was an agent. I think it's the only other Bond film which, and forgive me if I'm wrong here, but like has this relationship where the villain is a former agent. Like GoldenEye, for example, Sean Bean, Alex Trevelyan was 006, wasn't he?
I just had to throw out one.
You bastard.
You bastard.
If you haven't, YouTube Sean Bean bastard, and someone's done a collection of him saying bastard as
the
sharp.
Best.
It's brilliant. But anyway, so moving on, Silver in a way as well, he talks about M, and he talks about, it relates to as Mummy. He says Mummy was really
so
bad.
creepy.
And he kind of like sees James as obviously a brother, and
sibling rivalry.
And he wants him to join him, doesn't he? And he flirts with him. There's that bit where he's where Bond's like, "What makes you think this is my first time?" And he goes, "Oh, Mr. Bond."
I love
it's
that
like
scene.
a little bit
good.
flirty. It's a bit creepy. But it just makes this character like so different to any other kind of like Bond villain we've had. Did you know that that it nearly wasn't, that originally they were thinking about having Kevin Spacey play him?
Really?
Not Javier Bardem. That wouldn't have aged well, for especially how creepy he is as well.
Oh God, that would not have it. The thing is, I can imagine him in that role.
Yeah,
I really can, but
I'm glad he didn't though, because Javier Bardem is fantastic. And someone like Javier Bardem is such like a pin-up, and he's known to be one like a Hollywood like pin-up, and he just can, like, in No Country for Old Men, he's just this creepy character who just, the sight of him just gives you chills, just like him as Silver in this.
He falls into the role so well of just being this dark, menacing person, and it comes very naturally to him as well. which is a compliment, really. But
yeah, yeah, as an actor, yeah, just incredible. And one thing, I mean, we talked about a few things which we thought didn't really work in Skyfall, which there are only a few because it's a great film, obviously.
yeah.
But there's the bit where he's got the muskets and he has to shoot the shot glass
It's good
of
scene,
Severan's
yeah.
head, and so he misses purposely, and then Silver goes, I think he says, "My turn," and he shoots her, and then Bond just says, "Waste of a good scotch," you know. And again, line. It's like, it's not the Bond who we've had the whole time. It's just so throwaway Bond.
Yeah, like the thing is, again, that's him with his guard up. That's him showing he doesn't care. But you know he does. He's just like, he's got to put on this poker face, really. Yeah. And that's what he's been doing with him. He's just putting on this poker face the entire time. He even does it with them, because in that scene before when he's tied to the chair, and what's Javier Bardem's character's name? Silva, yeah. So Silva is saying, he's the one who says that you failed your tests back underground, you know, you failed on this, your stamina, all this and that. So once again sent you out knowing you weren't fully prepared for it. And that's when she says, "Mummy's being a bad girl," whatever. What does he say? "Mummy's being bad."
Mummy was really bad.
Mummy's really bad. Yeah. So again, he's always got his face on in front of Silver as well, and you can tell that it's just an image in some respects. Like when he shoots her, you know, he says, "Waste of a good scotch." It's him putting his front on, and you can slowly see the cracks breaking in Bond in that respect as well. But
it just leads into it's a very short time on the island. I kind of felt that was wasted a little bit. I thought there was going to be some chase scene on the island or something, but I mean, this is what makes it good though, because as soon, what did he say, the latest gadget from Q department or whatever he says, and the helicopters come up, and you're like, that's it. Now he's got caught. Literally it. But that's what makes it better when we go into what comes next, isn't it? That's what makes it work really well. Then we go back to London, and we're back in the bunkers, and Silver's obviously in jail, and in a way, it's he has that conversation with M first, and we're kind of like, we see the true menace, but we realize we kind of like sympathize with Silver, because M was just she treated both agents so badly, and we see him having the cyanide pill which didn't work correctly, and it's a great scene, and it's kind of harrowing to see the effects on his jaw and his face it had. Well, this is the thing. What she done to him is what she done to Bond. And they are like for like, and this is what the relationship is. They're fighting for them. M is the mother in this, and they're fighting for her affection, and it is, like we said, that sibling rivalry. And again, it harkens back to the fact that the decisions she is making is having a repercussion effect in the future somewhere down the line. And again, what I really like about this scene, like that cell he's in. Yeah, I don't know whether, like, again, we've talked about it with The Dark Knight, but this I didn't clock on until I watched it the other day, but this is very reminiscent of Silence of the Lambs. So there's a scene in that, I don't know if you remember, where Hannibal Lecter is in the cell, he's got the opera music playing, and he's just in the glass cell, and this is very reminiscent. And it wasn't until I watched, Kath and I had Silence of the Lambs on the other day, and I looked at that, I thought, this is where you got that inspiration. I thought you were going to go into obviously the Joker from Dark Knight, obviously, because it was his plan all along to be in prison. But Silence of the Lambs, that's an interesting. I haven't seen that for a while, so that's definitely. I know what you mean now. It's a horror though, so you're gonna have to watch a horror. Tom doesn't like horrors. I'm not a big horror fan, unfortunately. Well, I've seen Silence of the Lambs a couple of times though. I wouldn't say it's a horror film though. It's more of a thriller, but it's got elements of the horror in there. Let's do an episode on that. Let's revisit that. But what I was going to say, at the same time, we've got him, obviously, the breakout scene with Silver, and we've got the courtroom scene going on at the same time. There's a lot of stuff going on here. It's just building tension all the way through as well. It's just constantly going. What I just want to touch on here, because I know we have mentioned this already, but
Sam Mendes doesn't shy away from saying that The Dark Knight is one of his biggest influences for doing this movie. You know, in the same way that the Joker wanted to get caught and the Gotham police station blows up as well. Very similar to this as well, where Silver wants to get caught and there's a reason behind it. Sam Mendes actually went on and said, when he was talking about The Dark Knight and its influence, in terms of what Nolan achieved, specifically on the second film, The Dark Knight, it's something exceptional. It was a game changer for everybody. Nolan proved you can make a huge movie that's thrilling and entertaining and has a lot to say about the world we live in, even if it's not set in our world. That did help me get the confidence to take this movie into different directions. Without The Dark Knight, that wouldn't have been possible. On another quote, then, it said that Nolan has often stated that classic Bond movies were an influence on his Batman trilogy. As such, one can say that Bond has inspired Batman and Batman has inspired Bond, which is one of the coolest sentences I think you could possibly say as well.
Yeah,
I think that's
it
brilliant.
Full circle.
Yeah,
comes
it
full
does.
circle. And you do see it and you can see those influences. And obviously, Nolan has talked about how he does want to do Bond one day, but he's just said they don't need him. I think he said something like he'll do it when he's needed, because at the moment he's not really needed. And so that, I mean, we all know that, you know, Tom Hardy will play Bond and Michael Caine will
be Q
or Moneypenny.
Yeah,
Mr. Bond.
Cillian Murphy could be the villain, though. That would work really well.
Yeah, you could just picture it now, can't you?
Yeah, but he's also done Tenet as well, which he said is his version of a Bond film as well.
Yeah, it's very kind of Bondy, isn't it? The whole agent thing. And again, that's another conversation in its entirety as well. But I think having, you know, I only lived in London briefly, but we all know kind of London Underground and you know, kind of the chase sequence in a way of
this is amazing.
Oh, it's incredible. And I think you see, and what's really weird, I don't know if you have the same thing, is obviously now that living in COVID times, just seeing so many people packed in.
It doesn't feel right,
feel uneasy. Like, it was really weird. I mean, you're seeing people get shot and people left to die, or, you know, explosions. It doesn't make you feel uneasy because it's Bond. But as soon as you see a crowd, you're like, oh, I don't like that.
Where's your mask? Where's your mask?
Where's your mask? I hope they sanitized after getting on that tube. But, you know, and there's also, you know, there's what I love about Bond films, there's always a little bit of humor in there. And, you know, that bit where he jumps on the back of a tube and it's that couple and the guy goes, what does he say? He's like, he's keen to get home. Or
that's such a funny line, because that's British dry humor in its finest, isn't it? That's just such a British sense of humor, and I thought that worked really well. And this scene, though, is just the way it builds tension to the courthouse, and you hear M doing the poem that her husband loved as well.
Like the Tennyson poem, we must do battle in the shadows. Very moving. And she says that it was her late husband. Yeah, and so that's quite moving, because I can't remember if it's in Quantum of Solace, but in Casino Royale, she, on one of the previous Bond films, you definitely see it. You don't get introduced to her husband, but she's in. You know, it's her husband or something. Yeah. So it kind of another thing which adds to like M's character, and it's just very moving. At the same time, you know, we've got the chase scene in the London Underground, and it's all part of Silver's plan. All part of Silver's plan. And it's just it's so well done, and. You know, it then obviously leads to the scene where they go back in time. Bond says we're going back in time, and kind of in a way kidnaps M from a courtroom, and then we get the introduction of the Aston Martin DB5, reintroduction, sorry, and the Bond theme starts playing. And so good. I just remember, talking about it now just gives me chills. Just it's such a poignant moment.
Because wasn't this the 50-year anniversary of Bond as well?
50-year anniversary.
Yeah, that was really
anniversary.
Good.
So, and it's I love it, the fact. Oh, sorry, carry on.
No, sorry, just quickly. I just want to go back to the scene of like the chase going to the London Underground as well.
Oh yeah.
And you know, this might be a bit of a slight tangent, but one of my issues that I've always had with big blockbuster films, when they try to depict the UK, it's always London. That they always have, like just a scene. And like, for example, like, you think of the Marvel movies now, they go to London. And I think famously it was like Thor 2, The Dark World. And he was in Greenwich.
That's on the tube, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
he's
they
in
have
the
a
tube.
tube scene.
He's on the tube. I'm sure he's up the Shard at one point. And I think he's Greenwich
Mission
as well.
Impossible as well, I think.
Mission Impossible. But then Spider-Man Far From Home, when like he's in Europe, but then the final fight takes place in London on Tower Bridge, just 2 minutes away from where Thor had his fight. And it was just like, it's always been a running thing for me. It's like, if it's going to be depict the UK, it's always going to be London. I think this is one of the only times I feel like it works really well, because they utilize in a Bond film properly in the UK. They have the British sense of humor there. It works well on the London Underground. And I think that's great. Just for once, I would love them. Just do a Bond film. Like, why can't you just have, like in the next Bond, like if it's Idris Elba, for example, let's just have him running up and down St. Mary's Street in Cardiff, or going up the Brecon Beacons or something. Just do something that's going to make it, like, it'd be nice to have a little representation,
I go back to my point. You should audition as the next Bond. You could bring Bond to Wales.
Bonda do we? But no, I do. I really like that. Like, obviously as Bond, it's a very different movie from what we said with Marvel, but I really like how they use, like, the tube wasn't just a backdrop that you get with a lot of action films. It's got its purpose. He's using it to derail the train. He's using the systems to get to M as well. It just works really well for me in that way.
And ever since I watched the scene where he slides down the middle of the tube, I just want to do that every time I see it.
See, I thought you could, but if you actually see them, it's actually got warning signs in the middle. And I think, no, you just scratch your ass on that, so that's not real.
That's a flaw in the film.
Yeah, but again, just going by that scene, do you know when he goes down, if you notice, Silver falls in his ass, but then Bond just slides off and keeps running as well. And so, you're getting back to him, mate. You're doing good.
He's and you talk about the UK. I mean, we've got to talk about Scotland, and how incredible this is. I mean, on the briefly going back to like the old ways, how they're in the DB5, and he's M. I can't remember what M says, but he shows M the ejector seat button. He's like, "Go on then, eject me." Again, I apologize for my impression. My apologies, Dame Judy. But we get to that bit, and they have that epic shot of Scotland where they pull up.
Such a good shot.
It's amazing. And we finally see Skyfall.
Yeah, we
finally see what this is all about. And Skyfall,
such a good payoff. It's such a good payoff, isn't it?
Oh, it's incredible. And then you kind of get the introduction to Bond growing up as a child, and also we meet the groundskeeper, Kincaid, and it leads into this. I mean, did you know that character, they initially were going to hire Sean Connery?
Yeah, I heard about that one. I think they said it would have been a bit too distracting as well. I like the idea, but I do agree. See, this for me is the part where this is where, for me personally, the movie loses it a bit, and it loses points in my opinion. I just don't get why they had this character Kincaid. I don't like. You're introduced to this gameskeeper, and he's known Bond his entire life apparently.
Yeah,
and he lives there. We assume he knows Bond's job, because Bond goes, "Oh, people are coming to kill us," and he goes, "Right then," and as if he's ready for a fight. Again, why are you so keen for a shootout for starters? That's just strange.
He's not been told about this. He was probably having like a nice chilled afternoon, watching Antiques Roadshow, having a cup of tea, having a whiskey.
Yeah, exactly. And then he's well up for a murder. But then we're like,
he's away.
He must know then. He must know about Bond's job. Then, even though he's just agreed, fine, let's kill some people, he then thinks, right, I better teach you how to use a gun. So why are you so confidently going in to murder someone when you don't think he can use a gun? And when he can use a gun, you go, what do you do for a living again? And you're like, for me, I just didn't get why they needed this character here. For me, it would have worked much better, because it is, right, they're on their own. it was Bond, they're on their own, they're in the middle of nowhere, they got to fend for themselves. It would have made more sense. For me, the only reason they had him in there was to say that line to M, which is, oh, when I told him his parents died, he hid down here for 2 days or whatever it was. He wasn't really necessary.
Or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was my only thing with that. The one line he did have, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, is when Bond introduces him to M and he goes, "This is M. Nice to meet you, Emma." Because he calls him M. He's got no idea what these like code names are or anything. So he assumes it's Emma. I think that's absolutely
I think
brilliant.
her name might actually be Emma. I think
Do you reckon?
the character. I don't know, but that would be good. But it's great. Nice to meet you, Emma. It's so polite as well.
Yeah.
But then it obviously leads into what we all love, the Home Alone scene.
I got questions on that personally. Again, I don't want to sound like I'm being negative to this movie. I love this movie. It's a near perfect movie, but again, it's the Kincaid and the Home Alone scene that bring me slightly out of it. I don't know. I think maybe it just reminded me too much of that scene in Home Alone. Like I was genuinely waiting for him to get some string and paint like buckets of paint and hang them from the stairs.
Are you not a fan of Silver and his bringing the army of wet bandits, or the sticky bandits to Skyfall?
Do you know if for a joke they had Joe Pesci and I can't think of the other bloke's name, just as cameos going in, or like not even, they don't even have to have them but someone just fill up a sink in the house and turn the taps on. It would just be hilarious.
You know what they could have, like, on one of the bookshelves or one of the shelves, if they had like a DVD of Home Alone there, wouldn't that be a good little placement? What I thought they missed out an opportunity as well is where they come in and Kincaid kills that guy with the shotgun and he goes, "Welcome to Scotland." Again, terrible impression, but wouldn't it be amazing if he went, "Welcome to Scotland, you filthy animals"?
I actually think I would have preferred that. I don't know why I just thought in my head. Do you know when they pull up in the, like, it would have been brilliant if you just watched Daniel Craig and like M and Kincaid or whatever. They do like they're doing this big plan with everything, and then as Silver pulls up, it's just that scene where Kevin is like dancing and he's got all the mannequins and the
Michael Jordan cardboard
and he's just that. Silver's like, "Nah, let's come back. There's too many people."
Let's leave it. Not today. Not today.
But no, don't get me wrong. I enjoy the idea behind it. For me, it was fine. There was nothing wrong with it. It added to the value that, right, they're on their own. They've got to figure this out themselves. For me, it was just a little bit too on the nose, and it felt a little bit too corny in some ways. It doesn't ruin the movie. It just brought it down by a couple of points for me personally.
I know what you mean, and little bits like, so obviously M and Kincaid escape underground. Why does he have his bloody torch on?
Oh, no, this winds me up.
Silver just turns around, he sees a torch, he's like, "Oh, I wonder what
there
that
he
is." Idiot Kincaid. Idiot.
Yeah, but it's like, why are you here, Kincaid? Seriously.
You've just buggered everything up.
Yeah, you've just ruined everything. And then, like, I don't want to jump the gun a bit, but even when they're in that church at the end, it's like, Kincaid, do something to help her.
And also, like, Kincaid is obviously, he just comes in like he hasn't heard Silver talking to him. He like looks surprised. He goes, "Oh," like, "Oh."
You sounded like Patrick Stewart then in
Oh no. Welcome to Scotland. And I've seen it all.
He's on his way on the grass.
You were seeing me in X-Men, right? But like, I think it is. I mean, it's a cool scene, and when the helicopter goes into the lodge and explodes,
it's awesome.
It's very cool, and the lighting they use. It's interesting. Harper back to Roger Deakins, who obviously did the cinematography for this. He obviously did it for 1917 as well.
It looks perfect.
And there's a lot of scenes which are just
so
very
similar,
much like this.
Similar.
It's beautifully shot. But that church scene at the end. I mean, well, I just want to talk about one thing before that, when Bond is running and he runs on the ice.
Oh my god!
Stops, and him and that the other guy fall into the ice. I love that scene. I don't know why, but it's like he's underwater and he light the flashlight to the top, and then. But what I don't get, like, it's obviously Scotland in winter, freezing water. I mean, he would have got hypothermia. Surely,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
he doesn't come into the church with a towel around him, hugging a cup of cocoa. You know?
Just goes in, goes straight to the radiator.
Yeah.
Oh, it's cold.
Just like, oh.
But no,
Does some star jumps.
I think that's thing, just going back with the house scene as well, like when, you know, everyone's coming in and then you got the helicopter there, it all works. I can't remember what song he had on in the helicopter as well, but it's just really, really cool. Yeah.
It's kind of like a bit like a Vietnam War
Yeah,
film, kind of from the
exactly.
helicopters. It's very cool. Like,
yeah, what's the film? What is that film now? Is it Apollo?
Apocalypse Now.
Apocalypse Now is kind of like that very esque sort of thing with the helicopter coming in, but it's the thing with the Aston Martin I really think is cool as well, because like he just starts using that, but they using the car as a weapon or as a distraction as well. But then there's a poignant scene from me here where the house is getting absolutely battered, is destroyed, is blowing up, and then it's actually Bond who blows the house up as well. He gets more upset by the car being blown up than the house. And I think that's really telling that this is who he is. He does, the past is behind him. Whatever happened to Skyfall when he was a kid, his parents, he doesn't care. He even says, I always bloody hated this house, or whatever he says.
He does actually, yeah.
But then when the car gets blown up, there's a part, it blows up and he just looks really mad. And I think they just bring in that Bond tune as well, and it just works really, really well.
But you feel it as well. I remember like, being in the cinema and everyone going, "They did not."
Yeah, I know.
This is personal now. So yeah, I mean, obviously coming towards the end of the film, and M dies, and I think obviously Silver's about to do the suicide thing, the double suicide where he holds the gun to M's head, and then out of nowhere, Bond throws the knife in his back. And it's so funny because usually if you had a knife in your back, you'd be in agonizing pain. But Silver's just like, oh, for sakes. He just looks annoyed. So
this is inconvenient.
Yeah, like, God's sakes, Bond, every time.
It's the thing with Silver, you know he's the bad guy. And you, like we've said, you are sympathetic towards him as well.
Yeah, he's likable. He's likable.
Yeah, he's a likable villain, which, you know, he's not your stereotypical bad guy. He's just there to move the hero along. He is there for a reason. You understand his reasoning behind what he's doing as well, which you don't often get. But there's a scene here which he's after them. He's been after them the entire time. And then he sees she's hurt and he's like, oh my God, look what they've done to you. Yeah, and he's like, he's just this, I think he's just, it harkens back to like what we said with the Joker. Yeah, you don't know where his head is at. And like, he just wants her attention. He wants her love. And like he said, let's do it together. He doesn't care about getting out of this. He doesn't want to escape this. This is why he's happy to shoot the pair of them together. Yeah.
It's very poignant seeing. Obviously, M dying is huge because she's been in Bond for like 30 years or something like that. I very much love character. And then we
best line in the movie. Oh, I love this part where he says to when she's on the phone and she turns to Bond, she goes, "I did one thing right," and on about him, and you're like, see, I
just want to cry, don't you?
I know. It is that thing of like, you know, they've had a strange relationship, but at the end of it is just genuine love between them as well. I love that part.
It's brilliant. And it also, it's quite somber at the end because obviously he's doing, and another kind of Batman-y kind of link, well, not link, but slight similarity. It cuts to the end and he's standing on top.
Yeah, he's
looking over London. But obviously then
sorry, can you just imagine when he's looking over and there's a tap behind him and he's just had like a bat signal put on top of him. My six Mallory's there going, yeah, it looks good.
This is a great idea. Oh, I'd love it. Oh, that was
just like a gun or something. That's the symbol. Or martini.
Just 007 or a martini glass.
Just like, you know where to find me.
Why are you talking like that, Bond? Shaken, not stirred.
I'm Bond man.
Bond man.
I don't know. I think it's the 3 days of drinking that just caught up with me now. Just to touch on as well, what I really love with this, and I think this is left up to your own interpretation, really, but he loses. They didn't win in the end of this because, all right, Silver, this was a complete waste of time.
Silver wanted to die.
Yeah,
M wanted to die.
The thing
Not
is,
M didn't want to. He wanted to kill M, didn't he?
Yeah, so she died. So technically, they did lose. All right, Silver didn't see M die, but I think it was a pretty safe assumption that he assumed she was going to. So really, like you said, like this was pointless in respect of like it's the bad guy won.
So overall, Skyfall, 0 out of 5 stars. Don't go see it. No, it's terrible.
That's what I mean is that's why I like this movie, is because it's not the heroic ending where he saved the world. It's not about defeating a villain for world domination. That it is the fact it's very personal, and he has actually lost, really. Right? Yeah. He did beat the bad guy, but it cost him a lot more, which is kind of like what happens all the way throughout with M's story in respect. So, but yeah. Just go back with the I think that's great.
I think it's a lovely ending as well. I think obviously because he gets the bulldog, which is on M's desk, and
he voted for Brexit.
And we are finally introduced to Eve as Moneypenny. I think we've called her Moneypenny a few times on this podcast, but only because we know this last scene. So actually, we should have warned about spoilers.
Yeah,
now
we should do that in the future. Just say spoilers.
Yeah, maybe, but it did come out 9 years ago. So I mean, should have seen it by now. I think everyone's seen this film about 5,000 times. I mean, it's on every Christmas as well.
yeah, ITV.
But obviously as well, and Mallory, he calls Mallory M as well. So it's kind of like a new
beginning,
thing. Yeah, and I think overall it was just great. I mean, in a nutshell, I think really it's a story about two individuals fighting for the love of a mother, I think, to be honest. And the heart of the film is about the now and the past, and how they kind of kind of work together, but also
coincide,
kind of clash. Yeah, it's so. Well, I mean, what was your overall kind of like thoughts on Skyfall itself?
I think this is in terms of Bond, I'd be surprised if we ever get a better movie than this. I think it's really set the bar on what you can do with a Bond movie in particular. And, like I said earlier, you could watch this as an individual film. You don't have to be a lover of Bond. The thing with the 007 movies for me, most of them are very, very generic. It's a bad guy who wants to take over the world in some capacity, who's got a secret base, secret island, or whatever. And he's, there's nothing personal there. There's nothing new, where this actually made us go, right, let's strip it back a little bit. I say that. It was Casino Royale that stripped it back a little bit and made it go, right, let's start from the ground and work our way up. But with this one, we actually see consequences for their actions as well. And how mistakes they've made in the past has finally caught up with them, in particular with them. Because even though she is an antagonist, she's one of the protagonists. Sorry, she is actually the bad guy overall. It's not fair to say that she's bad guy, but her decisions in the past are not the right ones either. So I think this movie for me is flawed. I think in regards to the actors as well, because we haven't really spoke about that much, I do think Daniel Craig, he gave it everything in this one. I think this is a standout movie for him compared to Quantum of Solace, which again, he just felt very generic James Bond. He wasn't really anything special. He was great in Casino Royale, but this one for me, he comes across as a human being in this. And you see that he's got levels of respect for these other people who his subordinates as well. He's got respect for Em. As much as he hates her sometimes and loves her, we get to see that relationship between Q, who I think, again, I'd love to see more of him in the future. Same with Moneypenny as well. I think what Sam Mendes done with this film, it would be very difficult to beat. Because, again, how much different can you make a Bond movie without trying to do this? And again, I know we've already mentioned Spectre. I feel like that's an example of they're trying too hard again to make something like this, and it doesn't necessarily pay off, But overall for me, I think this is outstanding action. I think it's one of the very few Bond films which I could watch on repeat.
Yeah.
If I was doing this out of 5, I'd give this probably a 4.5 stars. Again, I've criticized some parts of it. I don't think it's a terrible movie. I think it's a fantastic movie. It's just, for me, there's certain aspects of, like, you know, the creepy shower scene, the end in the Home Alone scene, which just brings me out of the movie a little bit. But it is a fantastic movie. It really is.
I think I would agree with you. I would give it 4.5 stars myself, because there are a slight few things which doesn't make it perfect, but my lord, it's an incredible movie, and it's something which I think I will thoroughly enjoy and go back to. I think I watch it once a year, this film, and it's just a different kind of Bond. And I think overall, it really just has that kind of like amazing character development. And like I said, it's definitely a Bond film which everyone, I think, really enjoys and loves. And the bar now is set very, very, very high, and Spectre was a disappointment. And I guess we're just going to have to see what No Time to Die is like. But obviously, whenever that does come back, very excited. Yeah. So, but I think that
maybe we'll have to delay it for a couple more years.
Keep it going. Oh, but anyway, I think that wraps it up. So thanks a lot, Joel, for chatting. And that's us for Skyfall. So thank you very much.
We'll see you next time.
3, 2, 1. Hey, welcome to our movie and TV podcast. My name's Tom.
My name is Joel.
And this week we're talking...
Oh, shit, sorry. We've done so well.